Assalamualaikum and good day to everyone. I'm Amir Shafiq with my partner Ahmad Arif Fauzan. We'll be presenting the final year project research on factors that influence the advancement of e-commerce among Uitm Seremban 3 students. Now, what is e-commerce and why e-commerce out of all the topics that are available? Well, e-commerce, also known as electric commerce, is the buying and selling of products and transactions through online platforms. Especially ever since the outbreak of COVID-19, it was very unsafe for any face-to-face meetups, and that's where today's highly advanced technology eased the process of online shopping for sellers and consumers. In this research, researchers will be focusing on three main factors, which are awareness and perceived usefulness, accessibility, and perceived quality, and seeing the views from Uitm Seremban 3 students for its advancement of e-commerce. Alright, so now we move on to the problem statement. E-commerce may be seen as something very positive, but it does have its negative perceptions. In 2020, it is still slow when it comes to the usage of online platforms by the global audiences. Next, there has been many cases of fraud and scammers nowadays that it causes consumers to trust less on sellers without actually seeing it in front of their eyes. Some even say that since it's online, misinformation may happen where the type of product may not actually be in the favor of consumers and they are unable to effectively communicate with sellers. It makes the people even more difficult to use e-commerce and wanting to use the traditional commerce way. Therefore, this research purpose is to find out the influence of the three factors for its contribution towards the advancement of e-commerce. So for the research question, firstly, researchers want to see what is the acceptance level among students in e-commerce as a new source of today's life. Secondly, is to know what influences them to transition from traditional commerce to e-commerce. And lastly, is seeing the strongest predictor that influences consumers' transition from traditional commerce to e-commerce. The research objectives is determining the answers for the three research questions. Alright, as seen on screen, here is the conceptual framework where the three main factors, which were awareness and perceived usefulness, accessibility and perceived quality as the independent variables on the left, and the advancement of e-commerce as the dependent variable on the right. As researchers have identified the independent variables, three hypotheses were created to fit the three variables. H11, if there is a significant and positive relationship between awareness and perceived usefulness and advancement of e-commerce. H12, if there is a significant and positive relationship between accessibility and advancement of e-commerce. And H13, if there is a significant and positive relationship between perceived quality and advancement of e-commerce. Moving on to the research method. Quantitative method has been chosen to carry out the research and using a cross-sectional design to collect data and be used at any period of the research. Researchers will be focusing on the university students of Uitm Seremban 3 for the level of analysis and taking a sample size of 357 respondents as proposed by Krejci and Morgan. Sampling technique and data measurement is by using non-probability convenience sampling technique and Likert scale respectively. For the data collection, researchers have created 5 sections where the first section is the demographics, followed by 3 sections corresponding to 3 independent variables and the last section being the dependent variable. Lastly, the data analysis is to examine the descriptive statistics, finding the correlation of the variables through Pearson correlation and seeing the strongest predictor through multiple regression.
Based on the table, for the gender part, there are 173 respondents who are male and 184 respondents who are female. Next, regarding the age, there are 126 respondents who are in the age of 21 years old and below, which consists of 35.3% of the total respondents. The rest of the respondents are categorized under the age of 22 years old and above, which are 231 people. For the semester part, most of the respondents are coming from semester 6, which consists of 104 people. Then it continued with semester 5, semester 4, Semester 3, Semester 2 and Semester 1, where the total of the respondents for every semester are 73, 49, 44, 71 and 14 respectively. On the other hand, only 2 respondents came from Semester 7 students. Moreover, for the faculty section, most of the respondents are coming from FSPPP, which are 225 respondents, followed by the respondents of FSR, which are 58 students, and lastly, the respondents of FSKM that consists of 74 people. For the current academic undertaking, most of the respondents are pursuing bachelor's degree, which are 257 people, and the remaining respondents are from diploma level with 100 people. Other than that, in terms of residential area, 177 respondents are living in the urban area, and this is where most of the respondents are coming from. Whereas for those who reside at semi-urban area, there are 138 people total. The rest of them reside at rural areas, which consists of 42 people. Lastly, almost half of the respondents are very active in following the e-commerce development, which consists of 170 people. There is a significant number of respondents that not as active in following the development of e-commerce, which is 153 people, and the rest of the respondents are not interested in being aware of the development of e-commerce, which is 34 people. Based on the first objective, the acceptance level among the students is good, with awareness and perceived usefulness factor received the highest mean, which is 4.257. For the accessibility and the perceived quality, the mean is 4.13 and 3.78 respectively. The study indicated that the respondents agreed that there is influence in all variables towards the students in Uitm Seremban 3. Next, the respondents were asked to rate the dependent variables, where the table shows the mean for the students' knowledge on the advancement of e-commerce, which is 3.727, which they acknowledge is development. For the second objective, there is a positive relationship between all variables and the advancement of e-commerce. This is because all the p-values are sitting under 0.05, which are 0.042, 0.04, and 0.032. Therefore, they can all influence the transition from traditional commerce to e-commerce. Lastly, for the third objective, the ANOVA generated in this test also shows a significant probability value, which is 0.027, and signifies all of the factors of awareness and perceived usefulness, accessibility, and perceived quality significantly affect the advancement of e-commerce. And based on the beta value, awareness and perceived usefulness is the strongest predictor, which is 0.352, and having the lowest p-value, which is 0.025, and that should influence the transition from traditional commerce to e-commerce. This result shows that ensuring the awareness and perceived usefulness of e-commerce is important and having a high impact on the advancement of e-commerce itself. The first suggestion is to establish R&D programs that stress on e-commerce development frequently. The aim for the program is for the students to make wise decisions on how technology may be used in extending the e-commerce usage on the daily life of a person. This is done so that it can prepare the students in maximizing the use of technology and to foster independence, and also to enhance local and worldwide commerce connection around the world. Next is by assisting the students in becoming more active in keeping track of its advancement. They should put more effort in finding initiatives and solutions arise from concerning problems around e-commerce platform nowadays. One of the efforts that can be made is conducting research on how e-commerce affects the user's daily life in terms of their speed and their perception in perceived usefulness, accessibility, and the quality of other platforms. Other than that, is conducting campaigns. Campaigns that are having close connection with any e-commerce platforms can be conducted to change the students' perspective on e-commerce by opening their minds on how important it is to change their purchasing habit from the traditional commerce to the modern way. Lastly, Student organizations can also assist the government in widening their awareness initiatives, especially for those who are at disadvantage that reside in distant areas such as rural areas. If awareness can be spread to this group, there is a high possibility that the e-commerce usage will be increased since they know its potential already. Firstly is the generalization of findings. This research is only applicable in the Uitm Seremban 3 area because the finding done is difficult to generalize in other areas. Different codes of study in different programs may also result in varying levels of awareness of the e-commerce potential. It is suggested to focus more on the precision of specific data findings to provide researchers additional consistent data in supporting the study. Next is sample size. The focus group in this study is limited to students in Uitm Seremban 3, and this would give a narrow viewpoint and thoughts in the advancement of e-commerce. By pinpointing different areas, whether it is a public or private institutions, this would give a wider and different opinion on e-commerce advancement nowadays. Other than that is student cooperation. Researchers encountered multiple obstacles, such as the distribution of questionnaire in a short time. Therefore, questionnaires should be sorted out not just through the Google Form method. They should also be shared in social media, such as WhatsApp, Telegram, or other career platforms such as LinkedIn. Lastly is cross-sectional study. It is an investigation tool that can be used to collect data based on a specific time frame. Cross-sectional investigation can generate plausible predispositions in which non-reaction is a specific concern, which would resulting in a decrease of the proportion of result. And therefore, it is suggested that researchers should utilize the longitudinal investigation for the information assortment in a time frame to acquire a more accurate data. To conclude, the researchers has satisfactorily answered all of the research topic and hypotheses. According to the findings of the study, the advancement of e-commerce is directly related to the awareness and perceived usefulness, accessibility, and perceived quality. This demonstrates that the three variables are essential in influencing the given objectives. E-commerce platforms provide consumers, especially students, a useful platform as a replacement for the traditional commerce. And therefore, the researchers are confident that the e-commerce platforms will have a bright future ahead, especially where people are relying heavily on the internet nowadays.